So without further delay, I call upon Yang Bahagia Professor Tan Sri Zakri Abdul Hamid, Science Advisor to the Prime Minister of Malaysia, to deliver a keynote address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Madam Ceremony,
Thank you.
for that introduction. Dato' Ni Mustafa Ni Hassan, Director General of IKIM, Datin Professor Azizan Baharudin, Deputy Director General, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and salam satu Malaysia. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here this morning and to share my thoughts at this very important event. Let me congratulate IKIM for its effort in organizing the International Seminar on Science for Sustainable Development, Islamic Perspectives. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are meeting here today in the shadow of an unprecedented attack on the very foundation of sustainable development. In fact, it's a despicable series of attacks. I'm, of course, like Dato' Ni, referring to the unfolding real-time comic tragedy of Cameron Highlands, where greed, corruption, and unbridled development conspired to result in a classic case of unsustainable development. But ladies and gentlemen, that would be the subject of another seminar in another time. Today I'd like to speak and confine my talk on the crucial role of science for sustainable development. So be quite secular in approach, and I would urge you all in your two-day deliberation to fill in the blanks, especially in deliberating on the elements that Islam can contribute to sustainable development. I'm speaking not only as the Prime Minister, the Science Advisor to the Prime Minister, but also in my capacity as a member of the United Nations Secretary General Scientific Advisory Board, in which one of our remits is to advise the Secretary General on the role of science in the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals. That is the current agenda at the United Nations. I must also particularly thank Professor Azizan for inviting me here today. And in fact, Prof. Azizan had been a close colleague when she was a member of the National Science and Research Council, which I chaired. Ladies and gentlemen, science is critical to help meet the challenges for sustainable development, as it lays the foundation for new approaches, solutions, and technologies to identify, clarify, and tackle global challenges for the future. Science provides answers that are testable and reproducible, and thus provide the basis for conclusive decision-making processes and effective impact assessments, both in its scope of study as well as applications. Science spans from the understanding of natural processes and human impacts thereon, to the organization of social systems, the contribution of science to health and well-being, and on ways to improve subsistence and livelihood strategies so as to meet the overriding goals of poverty reduction. Faced with the challenges of climate change, science has already contributed to providing solutions for a secure and sustainable energy supply, i.e., the renewable technologies. Yet, there is a need and room for further innovation, for instance, with regard to the deployment of storage or energy efficiency. Moreover, the transformations needed cannot be tackled solely by relying on engineering and technological sciences. The social sciences and the humanities play a vital role in the successful realization of sustainable lifestyles. They identify and analyze underlying reasons behind decisions at the personal, sectoral, and societal level. They help devise ways to deal with them while taking social, political, and cultural issues into account. They also offer a platform for critical discourse, like what you are doing here today, about societal concerns and aspirations, and discuss priorities and values that determine political processes. So what I'm saying here, science is really a very holistic undertaking. Ladies and gentlemen, the improvements in weather prediction accuracy are an example of scientific success, with current 5-day forecasts being about as good as the 1-day forecasts were 4 decades ago. Nevertheless, there is still a need for longer prediction and for more regional applications and dissemination of the forecasts of extreme weather events, such as heavy rain, flash flood, and storm surge, which particularly affect the most underdeveloped countries in Africa and Asia. Although infectious diseases have been contained significantly during the last decades by vaccination and antibiotics, the world has to face an inevitable rise in pathogens resistant to antimicrobial drugs. In addition, new forms of pathogens have been recognized, or already known pathogens have appeared with new properties. The same applies to other widespread diseases. New approaches and new methods of treatment based on fundamental research on both the origin of antibiotic resistance and on the development of new antibiotics and alternatives are of critical importance to furthering human health and well-being. As these examples show, science contributes significantly and directly to sustainable development. They also demonstrate that science for sustainable development requires a broad understanding of science, which covers the whole range of discipline, from natural sciences to engineering to social sciences and the humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, basic science and applied science are two sides of the same coin. They are interconnected and interdependent. They complement each other so as to provide innovative solutions to the challenges mankind has to face on the way to sustainable development. or as Max Planck said, knowledge must precede application. And the more detailed our knowledge, the richer and more lasting will be the results we can draw from that knowledge. Basic research is driven by curiosity about the unknown and is not oriented towards direct practical application. Basic science means thinking out of the box. It leads to new knowledge and offers new approaches, which in turn may lead to new ways of the practical use. This requires patience and time, and it is a long-term investment, but it is the prerequisite for breakthroughs and big leaps forward for humankind. It is the fuel for progress and for a sustainable world. I emphasize this link between basic and applied science because there is an ongoing debate on which is more important than the other. And the fact that many countries, in particular developing countries, in particular countries from the Organization of Islamic Conference or the OIC, spend very little on R&D. In fact, among the 57 member countries of the OIC, apart from Malaysia and Turkey, which spend more than 1% of their GDP on R&D, many countries spend very, very little on R&D. And this is one of the crux of the problem why we are less advanced. Because the advanced countries spend anything between 2.5 to 3.5% of their GDP on R&D. The other aspect I want to mention here is how science is shaped. Science is universal. It is a language that we can share and that help us communicate better, leaving cultural and national borders behind. For example, at CERN, the European Lab for Particle Physics in Geneva, more than 10,000 physicists of 60 different countries work together, inspired by the same passion and shared goals. In universities around the world, new graduate and undergraduate programs are created seeking to educate global problem solvers able to work across disciplines, skills, and geography. Further on, ladies and gentlemen, let me also address the role of science as a key educational element. The critical thinking that comes with science education is vital in training the mind, understanding the world, making choices, and solving problems. Science literacy supplies the basis for solutions to everyday problems in uncontroversial ways, reducing the likelihood of misunderstandings and furthering common understanding. Science literacy and capacity building should be particularly promoted in our countries, in particular the developing countries where both the appreciation of the benefits of science as well as the resources for science are lacking. This situation creates dependence on countries that are scientifically more literate and resourceful. Ladies and gentlemen, science is also a public good that not only brings about transformative change on the road towards sustainable development, it is in itself also a way of crossing national, cultural, and mental borders, and thus helps lay the foundation for a sustainable world. Science may also further democratic practices when results are freely disseminated and shared as well as made accessible to all. For example, the World Wide Web was originally invented to facilitate the exchange of information among scientists working in the CERN labs. Since then, the web has radically changed the way humankind accesses information. Since Tim Berners-Lee developed it in a publicly funded research center, he has no interest in patents and made his revolutionary knowledge freely available to everyone. So those are some of the issues that reflect the scientific endeavor. Let me now address on the multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary aspect of the scientific approach towards sustainable development. And in this context, let me refer to the post-2015 development agenda, which is being debated by the international community. And here, it goes without saying, in trying to promote sustainable development, we must take a balanced and holistic approach. And one of that example will illustrate this interlink problem. This example is a strong interrelation among nutrition, health, gender equality, education, and agriculture. The very challenges of sustainable development. It is impossible to be healthy without adequate nutrition. Adequate nutrition is closely linked to agriculture for producing nutritious food. Agriculture, however, affects the environment and thus biodiversity. It is estimated to be the main driver for deforestation when not implemented consciously. Now, women are at the nexus of health, nutrition, and agriculture. In rural areas, they are responsible for the daily food production and childcare. Due to a lack of access to education and a resultant lack of knowledge, they are not familiar with the interlinkages portrayed above. Moreover, their cultural background often discriminates against their well-being as second-class human beings. So promoting gender equality and empowering rural women is of decisive importance to pursue further improvements in all these areas, including reducing unsustainable population growth. So science is best placed to elucidate such linkages. Let me, towards the end of my talk, address some of the situation in Malaysia. In fact, Datuk Nick refers to the Vision 2020. And also, I would want to refer to the new economic model. Let me just say that both climate change and biodiversity loss are a global problem which knows no borders. As such, Malaysia joins the world in our concern about the environmental threat arising from carbon emissions and habitat as well as species loss. Accordingly, lower carbon emissions and environment-friendly technologies that is combined with long-term actions for protecting our biodiversity are critical drivers within Malaysia's sustainable development strategy. Indeed, green technology is one of the key tenets of Malaysia's new economic model, which underpins the nation's sustainable development efforts. Most of us are also very familiar with the country's commitment to reduce carbon emission. The Prime Minister's address in the high-level climate change conference in Copenhagen in 2009, and his many efforts along those direction. We are very committed towards sustainable development and also in adopting many approaches on reducing our usage of fossil fuel and more on the green technologies. I just want to address the new economic model, which is underpinned by three key principles, which many of you are also familiar with, namely high income, inclusiveness, and sustainability. In fact, here, I agree with Datuk Ni, one shouldn't just focus on the economic priority, which is very important, of course, but sustainable development needs more than that. In fact, I would venture in the end for sustainable development to gain roots in our countries and elsewhere, we have to infuse the element of ethics. And here is where the various practices, the practices of various religion would come into being. Not only the Islamic religion, but also Christianity and Buddhism. Because anything that pricks the conscience would have a longer shelf life. At the end of the day, I think that is what needs to be driven into our population. The second aspect here is the need to engage the young people of this country. That is not to say that people of my generation and Dr. Ahmad Ibrahim is irrelevant, but I think looking at what is going on now, our destiny is going to be determined by the younger generation. We have to engage them, and we have to make sure that there is a future for our young people. So it is along that context, late last year, the Prime Minister launched his Science to Action initiative. The Science to Action initiative, S2A, is meant to position science, technology, and innovation as an engine of economic development for Malaysia. I would also argue that the S2A program can be seen as a movement to ensure sustainability in the conduct of government in this country. Under the Science to Action initiative, there are three channels. One, we are trying to transform the governance of science in this country, where we are trying to cut the waste, the duplication and silos within and among government machinery. Secondly is to engage, science for the industry is to engage the private sector to be more involved in the initiative, but also in particular, getting them to be conscious of sustainable development. And the third track is science for well-being. And here again is where we are trying to reach out to the rakyat, to the people. And that last point is a very important one because it relates back to the ongoing in places like Cameron Highland as we speak today. So, ladies and gentlemen, my time is up. Let me end by quoting the Prime Minister when speaking of his commitment to conservation and sustainable development. In one of his speeches, he referred to Malaysia's towering Chengal tree. That is our nation's, for those who doesn't know, the Chengal tree is our nation's equivalent to the magnificent California redwood. Such giants, he said, may take centuries to reach their awe-inspiring height and girth, but can be felled in less than a few hours by an unscrupulous timber contractor with a chainsaw. So such outstanding monuments of nature are indeed so much more valuable than their wood fiber. They engender a sense of pride in our national heritage. This appreciation will, I believe and hope, ultimately pique the interest of some of the most brilliant minds, some of which are in this room in a variety of disciplines, and drive the innovative, nature-based solutions to global challenges on which future generations will depend. On that note, let me once again congratulate the conveners of this seminar and also wish you all a most successful meeting. Thank you. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.